Welcome to Mirrors into Windows, a podcast by Global Teaching Partners, an official Bridge USA designated organization. I'm Amy Corwin.
And I'm Dante Johnson. Together we dive into education from every angle, transforming reflections into opportunities and uncovering strategies that will help us look beyond the classroom walls.
Our goal is to connect educators from around the world, bringing you conversations, insights, and stories that will shift perspectives and ignite meaningful change. Because when mirrors become windows, the possibilities are endless.
Whether you're navigating life as an international teacher or searching for new ways to enhance your practice, this podcast is your go-to resource for inspiration, collaboration, and a richer understanding of the global classroom. So today's episode, we are looking at parent and community engagement, which is super important. I think that one thing that sometimes we don't realize is how important it is as a part of the learning and instructional process of our students and our families. It's not an add-on. It's not saying, okay, we're just here to teach. Oh, by the way, there's a community. Let's factor them in once we have the teaching down. It needs to be factored in all along the way. And so what it is, and there's so many different, takes on what it could be, but what it is that we're looking at ways in which the school, families, and local community can work together to provide support for our students' learning. I mean, in a nutshell, that's pretty much what it is. Mm-hmm. And of course, it can look differently, right? But, when you look at the why, it's mind-blowing. So like, when you look at how students learn, and you look at all the things that might impede upon a student learning, right? When you look at the differences, the variations with students with, parent income, family income, whether they're coming from a single parent or a two-parent home, whether even the educational level of their parents, where they're coming from, none of that matters when you have the parents engaged in the student learning. Mm-hmm. So they can come from various backgrounds, but that won't negatively impede upon their learning when the parents are directly involved in the student learning. Sure. And when you really look at it, and Amy, you can attest to this being a mom and being an educator, for you are your children's first teacher. Mm-hmm. You're the role model that they first see, and then they go to school. So they learn from you. So when you're involved in their learning, that only makes that learning, the student learning, even better and even stronger.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And it's a tricky area for teachers because, let's be real, kind of communicating effectively with your parents isn't always easy, but you are very aware that they are the key stakeholder in their child's life and are going to be the biggest advocate for them as they kind of champion their child to do well in the classroom. So the spotlight's kind of always on you. Interestingly, as I was thinking about this, it's also quite a tricky aspect for some international teachers. Yeah. The concept's quite different in other countries where there is kind of a removal of that personal piece with parents. I know for me, I would never have interacted directly with parents. I always had to interact through the secretary. So like if I wanted to communicate with a parent about a child in the class, I went to the secretary first to either set up a meeting or set up a call. It wasn't me directly like one-on-one communicating with them. Oh, wow. And so that is hard as well. It's different. And so it's interesting to get used to that new norm where you are the first person to kind of reach out to the parent, like first responder sort of. Right. Yeah. And so another aspect that's kind of tricky for teachers is there's a varying level of involvement. It's kind of one of those things where there's some jokes floating around about the type of parent you are. And you mentioned that I'm a mom, and so I've been giving this a lot of thought because I have a 3-year-old. She is in a preschool. We are getting to the point where, parent conferences are starting to happen and interaction is there. And I'm a teacher. Yeah. And so I've been on the other side. Yep. I see how it works. Yep. And it's difficult because one of the subgroups that we make fun of often is that idea of kind of overly involved parenting or helicopter parenting.
Is that you?
I'm going to try not to be, but I do do wonder if I will be somewhat of that because it's hard when you've seen it. But I do also understand the teacher needs some independence. The teacher needs the ability to make some decisions.
Yeah.
And I want what's best for my daughter. I don't want to like hover really, but also I've been there as a teacher and I know how it should be done. So, there's many reasons why a parent gets to that level of being overly involved. Sometimes it is because they have a background in education, but some parents have that fear that they're going to fail academically or they're being overprotective. Sometimes it is the cultural expectation to be super involved in your student's life. And, we're living in a very diverse melting pot where people come from all over the place in different backgrounds. And so sometimes strong advocacy for your child is expected. And so that's just kind of what's trickling into the classroom. Technology these days has made instant access for parents. Yeah. You can just email at any time of the day. It doesn't really matter when. Text, calls. So that has increased that level of kind of overly involved parenting that we're seeing in the classroom. And quite simply, it can be some sort of social pressure to just be there. The other subgroup is also equally challenging for a teacher is those hard to reach parents. There's oftentimes the teacher can just feel like getting in touch with that parent is just impossible. Reasons that happens, we've seen busy schedules, work conflicts. It can be as simple as just a language barrier where a parent doesn't speak English. And so they feel more reserved to kind of approach and be part of that. Life's just overwhelming sometimes and parents just kind of want to stay away. And, it could quite simply be no news is good news, right? So both of those subgroups make it a little bit tricky to have effective communication. But the key takeaway is every parent has a story. Whether they're overly involved, whether they're harder to reach, there's usually a reason behind it. Yep. But the challenge for teachers is to just really find ways to bridge the gap because it's super important to do it and be part of it and form that triangle because the child will be more successful that way. So today's episode, we're going to really look at some practical ways to kind of improve those parent-teacher relationships, ways to build trust, kind of avoid some of those misunderstandings maybe. We're going to kind of try to look down the lens of these two subgroups that we've mentioned. But truly, we're just going to work on kind of creating some partnerships that really support our students.
Awesome.
So whether you're dealing with a helicopter or overly involved parent who wants to kind of be part of every little detail, or you're kind of dealing with a hard to reach parent who rarely responds, both of those situations can create a lot of challenges in the classroom. And so there are practical ways in which you can kind of improve communication in your classroom. Build some trust, some clear partnerships. For those overly involved parents, it's also about sort of setting yourself some healthy boundaries with them so that you can reach them. And so when I was thinking about this, I thought it would be useful to kind of point out how those subgroups maybe show up daily in your classroom. What does that look like? And then from there, what it takes to kind of set yourself some ways to engage with them. And so, those overly involved micromanaging parents might be the ones that send the constant emails or the messages about the grades, the assignments, the small classroom issues, the behavior that happened.
Send it all.
They believe every story their child brings home and then they want it told from the parent. Not only do those emails come thick and fast, but they come at really random hours. Maybe you'll be sitting at the TV at night and you'll get an 8 p.m. email from a parent.
And they expect you to answer right then?
Right then. They want you to know about it. There might be frequent requests for kind of special accommodations in class, or parents trying to step in over you to kind of solve a problem before the child has kind of had a chance to do that.
That's a big one.
My favorite is when they show up unannounced at your door
Hello,
in the morning.
Surprise.
Hello, can we have a meeting? No, I have 25 kids right here that I have to try to teach all at the same time. But you don't want to be rude to the parent that just showed up at the door. And so often those parents aren't afraid to kind of challenge the teacher decisions.
They do it.
In the classroom management. And I mean, you just cannot be flat out rude and tell them to go away.
Right.
The kid is their child.
Yeah.
And so you have to be smart in how you build trust, but also set boundaries.
Exactly.
And so one thing that I found was really important to do was just acknowledge their concern first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
If they've come to you with it, they genuinely believe in their head that it is a legitimate reason to be concerned.
They're advocating for their child, right?
Correct. So don't just dismiss what they have to say. That will not do anything in building a relationship with them. But you might want to try reframing that conversation some.
Yeah.
I really appreciate your involvement, but let's focus on how we can help your child build some independence. Right?
I love that. I would love you as my child's teacher. I love that.
I really know that you are feeling concerned, but let's see how we can strategize and allow this kid to build some skills to deal with this issue we're having in class. I think for a parent like this, you got to set some really clear communication expectations.
Yeah.
That comes naturally and I think every teacher should do this for their parents right across the board. So, often at the beginning of the year, you really structure your communication, set up those channels. So whether you're going to use an app or you're texting or you have email, lay that out for the parent right at the start. This is how you can expect to hear from me.
Yeah.
We will send home newsletters. We will make sure we're using the Remind app or the Class Dojo app, and you will hear from me XYZ. Make sure you introduce yourself to your parents at the beginning of the year and kind of set up those boundaries. And that can be really proactive then about showing a parent how to reach you, how to get to you.
I love that point real quickly when you talked about how the parent with the communication, right? The communication styles. And maybe you can talk about this too, but one thing I've noticed is that depending on the parents, the generation of the parents, they prefer a certain way. So like some parents love to stay within the email mode.
Yep.
Some parents are like, text me. Like, I'm not going to read emails until the weekend. So text me so I can see it right then. And some use
kind
apps.
of learn their style
Exactly.
too.
But I've noticed that variation. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I've noticed that variation of different ways that parents like to engage. I mean, some, let's face it, are still really old school.
Yeah.
And I had this parent once that I just felt would never reach out to me. And so I ended up ditching technology completely and I wrote a note in a planner.
I love it.
And the next day I opened the planner and there's a little scribble note back. And so it's like that way opened the channel for us to talk. And I realized this person doesn't really care for all the fancy apps and technology and they're looking to get to me a different way. And so setting those clear guidelines up and kind of learning what works for your parents at the start will kind of be helpful too. I certainly think if you have very involved parents, you need to give some boundaries. Like I respond to emails in 24 hours. My working hours are 9 to 5, or here's an hour through the day that you can contact me where I have that time available. Kind of setting up some strong boundaries will help teach the parent what is acceptable. Because we said it before with instant technology, a lot of them just forget that they might be off work at 8 p.m. at night and free to text or call you, but you don't work at 8 p.m. at night, and that's when you're supposed to be taking care of yourself and recharging your batteries.
Boundaries.
I think in all of these situations, you're going to want to try to encourage the student to take some responsibility, some ownership. I think student-led conferences and conversations are really powerful.
I love those.
I think sometimes parents overstep on behalf of their student because they think that's what they need to do. But quite frankly, it's a really powerful skill for your student to learn to advocate for themselves.
It is.
With the help of their parent, right? But it's not them speaking on behalf of the parent. And a lot of times kids will just kind of let their parent do that talking. But as a teacher, you have the power to kind of pull out of the kid what they're really thinking, what they really need, what they really want.
Yeah.
And that can help the parent to realize, oh, I don't have to just be as involved here because this kid is really working, advocating for self and sort of gaining that independence.
Yeah.
But whatever way you look at it, you want to keep your emotions in check, right? This idea of this overbearing, breathing down your neck parent can be a lot. And so you want to feel like there's solutions there and you want to reach for your data to make sure that you have concrete examples to kind of deal with justify your actions there.
I want to go back to that. Because this is to me, I feel like this is where I cringe sometimes because I feel like education is one of the only professions where teachers get questioned so much about some of the practices.
Their choices.
And I'm like, does that same thing go for like doctors and physicians? It's like, parents will question things that teachers doing. It's like, but they are a professional. The teacher is a professional. They've gone to school. They've studied best practices, and they're able to change and modify things. So when you talked a little bit about that, I just felt some type of way, because I felt like, like that's one thing that teachers have to deal with a lot.
And that's why I was saying it's hard for me, because I feel that cringe. Like it's my desire to like be on top of my kids' education and make sure that the right decisions are made. But I also know the teacher is a professional, and I've been on the other side where I feel that heat of like, you're questioning everything that I do. Like, why aren't you letting me do what I'm trained to do and I can do well?
Exactly.
And so it is a little battle of wills, because you feel the hairs pricking your neck because you're now in two roles. And so that's just the unique lens of being a former educator. But I hear you, because it can be really tough to like have that heat all the time when you're like, I just want to get on with my job and do what I'm here to do. The other side to that is those parents you just can't get on the phone, or you can't reach at all.
They exist too.
And they are equally frustrated because they're unresponsive, they're distant. It shows up in the classroom where you don't get any responses to any emails, calls. It's generally for the kid that you do need to hear about, you do need to talk about. They don't come to conferences, they don't attend the open house, they don't come to any event. And then there's not really a lot of follow through with those classroom behavior. And all you want is just that partnership where they can be helping you at home and helping you in the class to kind of bridge that gap. And so with them, it's still the same deal. You got to try to build that trust, increase the engagement with them. You got to meet them where they're at. Find out their preferred communication style. We talked about that before. Technology is not for anyone and everyone. Maybe you do have to be a little more flexible with meeting times, offering virtual options for kind of working parents. A big thing here in the United States is the language barrier. And so don't just assume that every parent can come and meet you and talk to you in the language that you're comfortable in. So translation services for kind of non-English speaking parents, simplifying your messages, less is more. Sometimes they're very overwhelmed by too much communication. And one thing I would say to parents, and this made me think of something you told to our new teachers coming in at orientation. So many teachers just negatively communicate with parents. And you got to stop that. You got to make the first interaction a positive one. Tell our listeners about like that strategy and why it's important.
Yeah, so it's just the idea of, of course, when you're building relationships, you want to first build those relationships with the parents and give positive messages about their child. You want your parents to know that you know their child, right? Because that's what the parent wants to know. Does my child's teacher know him or her? And, with that initial message of, reaching out to them and communicating with them about the positive things that's going on in the classroom is helpful. So then when you do have to maybe reach out to them and contact them about something that the child has done that's more of the negative, then they're there to support you with that, right? So it can look in various ways. I think one thing I did talk about in the presentation is like even just that one email that you send, kind of like that sandwich method, right? So it's like you start off by, sharing some of the great things that their child is doing, because there's some good in their child.
You can always find something.
Exactly.
Don't
there
say
is
that
some good. And then you kind of flow into some of the things that you are kind of looking for that may be some challenges for their child. But then you also come with some resources or some resolution, something to kind of help say, okay, we understand that this is not just a problem I'm putting on your lap, but we're working together to help your child. So these are some things that I'm kind of putting in place. Or what do you think? Open up for the parent to offer some suggestions, like what things have you seen? But really getting those parents kind of good. So that's basically what I was presenting in the presentation. But that definitely is very important when building relationship with parents.
Yeah, and that relationship piece is key. Just creating that welcoming environment. by inviting parents to participate in kind of low pressure ways, like for classroom celebrations or volunteering in your class, creates that non-threatening environment where you're welcome here to be part of I'm doing.
That's right.
And inviting them in can be ways to tap into those harder to reach people. Look, I only really have one lens here. I'm a classroom teacher, and that is the viewpoint I have in this and how to engage directly with them with the classroom. But I know that this topic is a lot bigger than that. And you as an administrator probably have a whole different view on how, as a community at large and school-wide, you get your parents to be involved in what's going on in school. And so tell us more about that. How does that look really in real life?
First of all, you sure you haven't been an administrator? Because no, you gave some really good points. Like what you were saying really is the foundation of building relationship with the community, right? So I used to tell teachers, I say, you know what, the relationship that the school has with the community can only be as strong as what the individual teacher's relationship is with their parents. So that's where
the bigger community.
Exactly. So that right there is the seed. When those teachers have strong relationship with their parents, then that brings in more of the community, right? And so some teachers would question, why is this parent hanging around the school so much? Why do they want to do so much? Like those overly involved parents. And I used to tell them, like, okay, however, look at it as a way of, like, you have built this relationship with them and they love the school, and some of them just want to be in the atmosphere. They just want to be in the vicinity of good stuff that's going on because they feel welcome. I think one of the bigger things, as you kind of talked as I put on my administrator hat, right, and kind of like pan out a little bit, one of the bigger things that I felt was a need was that we honestly did not equip our faculty and staff with the resources to really be able to reach out and really engage our community. So teachers in their own classroom were able to do that, right? But when you look at it on a broader scale,
like a school-wide
so that actually became part of our school improvement plan, right? Because it takes all of these different stakeholders and to kind of pitch in to make sure that the education of our students is strong, right, and sustaining. So I felt like we needed to give some professional development to our teachers. Because what really began to happen, actually, Amy, is that some schools will hire a practitioner that really specializes in student or family and community engagement, but the school depends on that one person to do all the work, and that doesn't work. So what happened was they were empowering the parents and getting the parents motivated to come into the schools and volunteer and do these things. And these were parents who were very hard to get in contact with, right? So they were engaging them to come, and the parents were ready to come, but the faculty and the teachers weren't equipped. They weren't ready. So, and they weren't being, outright, disrespectful or anything, but they just didn't know how. They didn't know how to lay out the red carpet to invite them in, and so that's when we realized we had to equip our teachers. Then it feels
like wasted time, and the parents like, why is my time being wasted here?
Or there was definitely some friction, right? And that's when I kind of had to step in and say, well, our teachers, they want you to be here. Let's see what things we can give our teachers, because there are toolkits that both constituents have to have in order for this to be a great partnership, right? So doing that with our teachers, I felt like was one thing that was really helpful. Not just looking outward to our community, but how can we equip our teachers was very important.
In the school that I was working in, it was a Title I school, and so high Hispanic population, low poverty or high poverty rate. So like engaging them was tough because of some of the factors. And so I think what my administration always tried to do was kind of think ahead to the barriers that parents might face for coming in. Some of the key ones were, is there transportation involved in this event? Is there childcare at this event? And feeding them was always popular if it's dinner time. And so we very carefully orchestrated parent-community interaction at times where we knew we could kind of eliminate some of those factors. Like, come to this event, your kids are welcome to. Come and be part of this, there's free transportation. Or if you come and take part in this event, you'll get your dinner as well. So feed your family too.
Yeah.
And so I think from an administrator's point of view, personally, you've got to really like think outside the box in terms of reaching them in ways that you have to think of those things and be ahead of the game.
I think one thing too is like, okay, when you look at your parents, you know, teachers ask the question, who are my students? They want to get to know the students. I ask the school, who are our parents?
Yeah.
Where do they work? Some of them might own businesses. Some of them might have connections from who knows what. But those are ways in which we can, exactly, because like the students and our families feed into the community that we're a part of. Exactly. So when we have those nights, spaghetti nights, you know, or those pizza nights, you know,
is someone in a restaurant.
Exactly. And we can partner with them. And then also we can partner with other companies and organizations that are around the local community. That was a way and for us to really be able to tie in the community as a resource, because whether it's pizza night or spaghetti night, or whether we have parents coming in to tutor, we had parents coming in to tutor in some cases where they were sitting down with students and going into classrooms and tutoring. All of that really does positively impact the learning of the students. So we don't want to undermine anything that's done, because all of it's helping us move in the right direction.
If the parents find value in it, it trickles down to their students.
Exactly. And they found value in the school. They'd have a place in the
How many
school.
parents did you hear, oh, there's great things going on at that school up there? And, you know, then they spread the word. They're positively influencing their kid and creating a nice image about going to school.
Yeah.
So, like, the bottom line here is you got to work hard as a teacher to engage your parents. It's kind of a non-negotiable. You shouldn't avoid it. You should definitely do it. You should communicate consistently with parents and in ways that kind of work with the families. Don't shy away from it. Just try to understand those cultural differences and kind of adapt to those communication styles. Yeah. And so I guess the big takeaway today is just try some of those practical strategies with like low stake check-ins, invitations to your class at your school, have conversations with your administration about how you can kind of open those doors and allow parents to come in. Because ultimately, if you foster that relationship between you, your parents, and your students in a really healthy way, it will directly impact student learning and really increase their growth, their education. And look, that's what it's all about, really, isn't it?
That's it.
So I hope you've enjoyed kind of listening to some of these strategies today, and I hope you'll be brave enough to try some of them in the classroom moving forward. Pick up the phone and call those parents. I'm currently sitting in one of our Global Champions classrooms, a high school math classroom, and I'm really excited for this conversation today. So why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners and tell them a little bit about you and your role here?
Okay, thank you, Amy, for having me here today. My name is Patience Moyo. I come from Zimbabwe, and I'm a math teacher. I'm so excited and to be part of Global Teaching Partners. This has been my third year teaching, and it has been an exciting journey, and I'm really enjoying it.
Well, thank you for being here to talk with me today. We have been sharing with our listeners some important information about parent engagement. And so not only are you a high school teacher, I know you are a mom of 3 beautiful kids who are at all different stages in their education. And so I know you've seen this from all sides, how vitally important parent engagement can be. And so in today's age, we're dealing with very busy parents, many of which are now working multiple jobs, lots of children. And so teachers are really emphasizing that it's critical that they are able to kind of reach their parents to help support the students. And so I can imagine in a high school classroom, you have a lot of kids, more than just one class of children, and they're teenagers where communication might be just a little bit on the lower side anyway. That this is something that you have had to work very hard at and something that you are an expert at. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you do that?
It's a little bit tricky in high schools for parents engagement. But I'll answer this question looking on both sides as a parent and as well as a teacher. So as a parent, I feel being engaged in your child's education is important. I normally check everything. I've my students' grades and everything with me every time. So maybe when an assignment is not done, I'm checking, why did you not do this? This reduces burdens from the teachers as well, because if I'm checking my my kids every time, it means even the teachers, they have less work to be monitoring what is happening.
There's accountability on both sides.
Yes. So as a teacher, I feel being engaged with the parents is also important, and it is critical. And sometimes in high school, we might think that because we have teenagers, they can do whatever they can do for themselves. Some of them, they can drive, they can buy whatever they want. But I feel it is important to engage with parents because it helps with classroom management. So 2 days or a day before a semester starts, I make sure that I have I communicate with my parents. I send messages to talking points. When I send the message, I'll be introducing myself. I'll also be welcoming the students in my class, and I'll also be trying to give them a highlight of what they'll have to expect in my classes as well. Most of the time when I send those messages, the parents really, they all they respond, and the response is amazing, and that helps me to have to continue having some conversations with them, because most of the responses will be, thank you, Miss Mo, thank you. We look forward to working with you, and thank you so much for reaching out. So that opens a
establishing that relationship
exactly.
with them. That's really great.
So that works with me, so that most of the time, maybe when we have some small wins, or maybe we have done something great in the class, it's not difficult to communicate or to express to the parents. I don't only wait for situations where I have some issues with the students.
I love that.
Yes, so I don't have to wait for that time so that I'll be able to communicate. I have already established a relationship with my parents. So whenever I have an issue, the communication it's like continuation. So I had a student, he had some accommodations, and he was not able to speak to anyone verbally. The only person that he would speak to was his brother. So whenever he wants to go maybe to the restroom, he would text his brother on the phone, I want to go to the restroom. Then the brother would come and tell the teachers that he wants to use the restroom. So that's how the situation was. So because I had already sent messages to the parent at home, introducing myself, trying to open communications with parents, I started to discuss some of those things that I was seeing with the student, with the parent, and the parent was so open enough to explain to me the challenges that his son was facing. Every time I try to push and ask something, he will give me some nonverbal cues, nodding his head, something like that. So every time he does that, I'll text his mom. I'll tell her that today he nodded his head. He was so happy, and I received my work. And that communication, he also started to love math. So the mom would send messages to me like, Miss Moyo, my son loves your class. Every time he comes home, he's only doing math. And when I ask him, why are you only doing math? He'll be like, because the teacher cares about me.
And she's able to reaffirm that you're a safe space, right?
Yes, exactly.
By your communication with her.
So most of the time, he wouldn't want to miss my class for anything. I remember another time they wanted to go for a doctor's appointment, and the mom said, he cannot miss your class, Miss Mo. It means I have to bring him so that you can just go straight to the doctor after your class. And the best thing that ever happened, and everyone was so proud of me was that he even passed his Math 1 EOC state exam. So even up to today, I'm so proud of the achievement that happened, and the mom was so happy. That win only came after the relationship that was there between myself and the parent. We tried to work together for his success. You need to try and reach out. You'll see that the response that you get from these parents is overwhelming. These parents, they care about their children. They want to know what is happening with their education. So let's reach out to these parents, and it will make even our teaching more easier.
Well, this has been wonderful to talk to you and just spend a moment in your classroom.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to also share my stories with you.
Thanks for listening to Mirrors into Windows. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. It helps us reach more educators just like you.
And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or any other social media, or visit our website at globalteachingpartners.com. Until next time, I'm Dante Johnson.
And I'm Amy Corwin.